Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Okay, so this morning before I get to work, I get to etch my marks and clean up finishes and install some handles on some, there's 10 8-inch chefs over there. Decided to go ahead and do another couple of videos on the opinels, the toothy versus polished edge tests. The last one, what we did was cut up a whole bunch of bags. Chip bags, a plastic rice bag, dog food bags, and then seems like we cut something else up, and then I cut up a Dr. Pepper, an aluminum soda can. So before we do the next test, we need to touch these edges up a little bit. They were scrape shaving at the end of, after cutting the bags and the soda can and everything, but I think what we're going to do now, and I've touched the edges up several times throughout the testing, in between the tests, not during them. But I think now would be a really good time to go over, touching up the edges. A lot of times when I do sharpening videos, I, start from scratch, from something that needs a complete new edge. And you don't have to sharpen like that all the time. If you do, you'll just end up removing an awful lot of extra material. So I'll just show you real quick how I have been touching up these edges, and then we'll, I've got plenty of arm hair left. We can go ahead and shave some hair off my arm, and then I think we'll do some paper cutting and some of this foam cutting. This stuff's kind of interesting stuff to work with. All right, so let's go the 325 grit. Now remember, this edge has got a micro bevel on it, okay? So none of the cutting that we did, I'm not seeing any real light reflecting off of there. There's a couple of spots that there might be a little bit of a glint, but we're not going to go ahead and raise a burr and, then prepare the burr and then remove the burr. All we're going to do is we're going to very, very lightly touch up that micro bevel, okay? And it's almost like a plateau method, except for we're not actually looking, to remove the glinting of the light because I can't see any, okay? So pretty much it's just 2 or 3 real nice light strokes at that same higher angle that you would use to remove a burr, only there shouldn't be much of a burr there to remove. And so pretty much it's just okay, so if that's flat, that would be your normal sharpening angle. Well, maybe a little bit more since this is a convex blade. So we're just going to go about like that or so. And just enough pressure to keep the steel in contact with the stone. And then we checked to make sure that we did not raise a new burr. And we did not that I could feel. You guys can't hear that, but that's popping hair off my beard. And it's popping hair off my beard the other side. So the reason you test one, either on your beard, because, you're going to shave sooner or later anyway. You test one side and then the other side. If it shaves one side but it doesn't shave the other side, that means you got a little bit of a burr. And, that it's shaving on the side that the burr is towards. Okay, so if it would shave on this side but not on this side, then that means I got a burr here and it's kicked over that way, and that burr is what's doing the shaving. Okay, so that edge right there is touched up. So we're done with the 325. Now the 6000 grit stone. Now remember this one, we're not doing a micro bevel. We're doing a stone stropped edge on this one. Now this one, I can almost see a little bit of light reflecting from up in here. And maybe one spot back in here. So pretty much on this one, now I just, the 6000 grit side of these Kings is supposed to be a splash and go so you don't have to soak them. So pretty much we're just going to, so if this is flat, and this is our sharpening angle, then we're just going to maintain that angle. Okay? So we stone strop, oh, there's a little grit right there. This is kind of a funky angle for me to, I don't normally hold the stone like this. Just a couple of times, then we take a piece of soft wood and knock any burr that might have formed in there. Hold it like this, there we go, that's easier. And then stone strop it 2 or 3 times on either side. That's twice on either side. That's the 3rd time on either side. Now would be a good time to point out why I like these water stones for higher finished edges. See all that black stuff right there? Okay, that's steel that you just removed from off of your knife. Okay, now these water stones, their greatest claim to fame as far as I'm concerned is that they are soft, and so the stone, the top layer of stone can be, you know, sheared off very readily. If you use enough pressure with your knife, you'll remove that, but then you'll leave more metal behind from your knife. If you use, you know, a dressing stone, then you'll just shave that top layer of that stone off and then expose clean, fresh abrasive underneath. Okay, so now let's clean the water off. We'll just drop it on my jeans right quick. Yep, you guys can't hear that, but that's popping hair off both sides pretty well. A little bit better than the 325. The 325, one place that it does kind of struggle a little bit is shaving. Okay, so now it'll shave, but not very close or very comfortable. So if you're like me and you have some sort of a facial hair going on and you don't shave on a regular basis, you know, I guess I shave regularly, maybe once or twice a week. And you know, every once in a while you get that hair that's sticking up and it's kind of out of the, you know, and you usually see it when you're away from your razor. Well, you know, you can take your pocket knife and hit a mirror and just pop that hair right off. The 6,000 grit edge takes that hair off a little bit easier than the 325 does. So now we got the 30,000 grit edge. For that, I'll bring you over here to where the strop is. Okay, now we'll take a look at the edge. I see a little bit of light possibly up in here, but not a whole lot. So okay, so we'll just do like 3 or 4 licks on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I said 3 or 4, so that was 5. Okay, so now this part right here is kind of important. Now go ahead and palm strop it to remove the chromium oxide that'll be stuck onto the blade. Then go to your linen, and we'll do 5 or so on this side. And then now to the leather. This blade is kind of funky with that because where you would hold this is the locking mechanism. So as you strop it, it's kind of turning and trying to take that lock off. Okay, now we'll test this one also. Oh yeah, that's popping them off really well. Yep, popping hair off really good. Now, one last thing before we move on to the paper about touching up these edges with the different edge finishes. Your 325, that 325 diamond stone, okay, it will remove material much faster. Okay, so you have to be very I mean, if you're touching up like this, very light-handed. Okay, otherwise you'll just remove, you know, a whole lot of extra material and you'll wear your knife out. That's something that I'm pretty you know, I mean, I do that a lot. I mean, you know, I mean, sharpen quite a bit, and so I'll have a tendency to wear knives out a little bit faster with the 325 than with the 6000. The 6000 is really nice because it touches up and doesn't remove very much material as it touches up. Now, granted, if you damage an edge, okay, if you knock a chip out of it, or you're cutting into something, you hit a nail or a staple or something like that, and you really damage that edge, then you would need to go to the 1000 grit side to remove all that damaged material, and then touch up on and then finish off on the 6000 grit side. So if you're cutting clean materials all the time, then that 6000 grit stone would be really nice, and you would slow down the wear on your, you have to remove material to sharpen, but the 325 tends to remove more material faster per sharpening than the 6000 grit stone does. The same goes for the 30,000 grit edge, the chromium oxide and the Strops and everything. That one for me on the Strops is kind of a trade-off, okay? Because that highly polished edge, for me it feels like I have to put so much more force behind it to make each cut, because it doesn't have that aggressive teeth, that cut instantly like that 325 grit edge does, or even the 6000 grit edge. But so the more force you put into each cut, the more stress you're putting on that ribbon of steel that's your edge. The more force you put on that, the faster it wears. The faster it wears, the more often that you need to sharpen or, strop on the strop. With the strop, the more rounded the edge becomes. The more rounded the edge becomes, the more blunt it becomes, the more force you have to put through. And it's kind of a... for me, it's a cycle that I don't particularly care for a whole lot. Now, on straight razors, which is what I use a strop for most, that doesn't really... that whole cycle still happens, and that's why you have to go to the stone every, year or a couple of years, depends on how much you shave, to take that round edge that strop is creating and bring it back flat and then bring it back true so that the strop will, continue sharpening again for you. But for everyday use, I don't particularly care for the strop. Okay, so let's do some paper cutting right quick. All right, let's get these knives out to where they're in order here, and we'll go ahead and open them up. Probably should have just left them open, huh? Okay, so the kind of paper that I've got here in the shop right now, we've got Trader's paper, which is just a recycled type newspaper. Pretty thin stuff. So I start off with a 325 grit edge. For an aggressive edge, that's cutting, if I'd cut with good technique, it cuts really well. Okay. Now the 6000 grit edge. You can tell I don't cut paper very often. Now that 6000 grit edge is slicing it a little bit nicer. You don't have as much sound as the 325 grit edge. Now the stropped edge must have a bad spot right up in there. It's cutting a little bit smoother, except for I must have left a little bit of a ding right up in there. That's another thing with stropping, is that if you're just touching up on the strop doesn't really remove a whole lot of material. So if you get a bad spot, there we go. If you get a bad spot in your edge like that, like let's say that spot where you hit a nail or a staple or a rock or a pebble or something like that, that the coarser stones will tend to smooth that over and remove that damage a lot faster than what the strop will. The strop is just kind of polishing up what's there. Okay, now we have some copy paper. 325 grit edge is doing good. 6000 grit edge. Okay, it's doing all right. Cuts a little bit. It's about the same difference, you know. I mean, the finer polish is making less noise. I don't know that you could tell if it was a smoother cut or not. And the polished edge is doing kind of the same deal. You could do like some really fine things. Okay, that's the polished edge. That's the 6000 grit edge. Now here you can kind of tell, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up very much, but there's more like feathering on the edges of the cuts of the 325 grit edge, probably because it is so aggressive and it's just, you know, I mean, it's just ripping and tearing through, kind of like a serrated blade. Whereas the 6000 grit edge and the polished edge, there's less of that fuzziness around each cut. And I kind of doubt you're going to be able to see that because, okay, I can just barely see it when the light catches it. Just there's some little bitty fuzzies right up in there. I mean, and then they're small. I mean, they're half a thou or a third of a thou or so in diameter, something like that. Okay, so there's that. Let's we got a post-it note here. Not that I think that well, I guess I do cut some paper, you know. I mean, that's the 325 grit edge. You know, I mean, I cut, you know, this is you know, like a classified type newspaper. So when I see something in here, you know, like, let's say, Mog's Thrift Store, you know, if that ad was something I was interested in, I would go ahead and cut that ad out, you know, and put it on the desk so I could get to it later. And I open mail, and if I've got to wrap a present or something, you know, a birthday or a Christmas gift or something like that, you know, I don't, it seems like the scissors are never in the drawer where they're supposed to be. So a lot of times I'll just grab my pocket knife and cut that up, you know, cut the wrapping paper. Okay, this is a very interesting material. This is the the foam that I use to put into the big, like the 8-inch chef's type, you know, mailing boxes. I don't think well, they look kind of like this. You know, the boxes that the kitchen knives get shipped in. And that just kind of protects them, you know, during shipping. So this is a 325 grit edge. Now see, trying to carve off pieces of this isn't really working all that well. But a straight in cut will work really good. And you can definitely tell that there's an awful lot of, you know, you can definitely feel the teeth as they're going into this. This is the 6000 grit edge. Now see, the 6000 is wanting to whittle it a little bit easier than the 325. And in a straight down cut, it's actually doing a little bit better. Now the polished edge, there's a spot right there where it got some bench dust. Now see, that's wanting to whittle it pretty good, about the same as what the 6000 grit edge was doing. And a straight down cut that actually feels like no, for a second there I thought I was feeling teeth on that polished edge. But it's just as it's going through the different, you know, the different little cells in there. Okay, so I think that's yeah, I think that's about it on the paper cutting test. I don't think I have any. I don't have any like really fine paper, you know, like receipt paper or very fine type of stuff like that. And I don't think that we did anything to these edges. Yeah, that would make them cut any less. Yeah, they're all still popping here. Maybe slightly less than what they were when we started, but not nothing to write home about. So the next test, I'm going to shut you off here in a second, and then the next test will be cardboard cutting. And, you know, I think maybe for that I will touch the edges up, just, you know, pretty much what I just did, just to make sure that we get the best that each one of them can do. And we've got, I've got a Crunch and Munch box here, and then I've got a whole bunch of dog food boxes and what other kind of boxes. We'll go ahead and cut those up, and then, yeah, and then I'll be able to, you know, put them in the burn pile and kind of clean the rest of the shop up. So again, this is Joe Calton with Calton. Wait a minute. First of all, just to make sure, these, like I said, this test is not really which edge is better overall. It's more of a, you know, this is what 3 different type of grits, you know, edge finishes look like on, you know, a knife cutting different materials. It seems like I run into a lot of times folks are saying, you know, will say that, oh, well, a polished edge won't cut nothing. Or a, you know, a very coarse edge, well, you know, that's not sharp. And neither one of them are really true. It just depends on what kind of cutting you like, or what kind of cutting you normally do, your style of cutting, how you like to sharpen, how much material you want to remove, you know, all that kind of stuff kind of goes into picking the edge that you like. And that's what this is about, is kind of just giving you a broad overview so you can kind of start, you know, messing around with different stones that you might like. So again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.